Having the right TMS is vital in supporting freight broker growth. Partner with TIE software to optimize your processes and compete with confidence. Get into the automation, data insights, and cash flow optimization game. Request a demo at tiesoftware.com. Welcome back to another edition of Check Call. Today we're talking all things dynamic pricing. Don't forget to subscribe to Check Call, the newsletter, on FreightWaves.com if you haven't already. Today we are joined once again by the one and only Mitch Mitchell, CEO of TIE Software. Thanks for coming back on the show, Mitch.
Thanks for having me, Mary. It's always a pleasure to be on the show with you.
I'm pretty excited about today. It's our first TIE of the new year, and I feel like the best way to start off the new year is the question that everybody wants the answer to, and that is, how do I price things and win freight? Like the ultimate question, I'm sure it has never been asked to you ever once in your life. What is kind of the main differences between dynamic pricing and kind of that traditional pricing model of, you send an RFP, someone quotes it, or you send over something for a spot quote? What's kind of the main difference between the two?
Yeah, so what we see is you can't just hope and pray on pricing like we used to, right? The models and the pricing has changed a lot. It's moving quickly. And the faster as a brokerage we can respond to changes in the market, the more accurate we can respond to those RFPs, the better we can handle the specific requirements or the changes in temperature of the environment. And the faster we can do that, the better it's going to be for our customers. Now, this can get a little dicey when we start talking about contract rates, right? If we contract some rate in with our customer for a year, that's an awfully long time. And so maybe even if we extract fuel, capacity is changing so much that the dynamic pricing model allows us to build that in. And then we can also take it and allow it to build in some transparency and tell our customers that, yeah, we're going to give you market rate plus a percentage, and show that transparency in the percentage markup that we're adding, but allow us the flexibility to buy better, allow us the flexibility to deal with the changes in the market.
I think that transparency in that markup is something that, I don't know, to me seems very new for the brokerage world, because there were times where, I worked in auditing and pricing, so we would get invoices from people and we would have to put them in one way, and then we'd have to show them to our customer another way. So that way we kind of hid that margin and hid what that actual price was. And I always felt kind of like, I don't want to say uncomfortable, but I felt weird doing it, that like, why are we having to hide our markup in our pricing if like our customer obviously knows that we're not doing this for free? So like, why aren't we just telling them like, yeah, it's a flat rate plus whatever we have?
Yeah, I think it depends on the customer and it depends on the broker. So I'm definitely not in the position where I would say one's right and one's wrong. Sometimes transparency can be really powerful, especially if you're dealing with like you're saying, a bigger customer maybe, or a bigger shipper that is willing to understand like, okay, this is how much I need to pay my brokerage for handling this valuable service. That's different than maybe somebody who's just looking for the best pricing and is going to really be unhappy about having a margin in there. So there's definitely a case for the transparency and a case for it to not be there. But I think, and what we've seen is sometimes our brokers who are working with larger companies and larger shippers, when they offer that transparency in the pricing, what it does is it takes away the risk factor of working with a freight broker. It takes away that component of, well, how much are you making off us? And they can just be open about it. This is the percentage we're making, and this is what we're going to do for that percentage, and it's going to add a lot of value to you. So that can help build a really strong relationship and make it so that you can capture all of that customer's freight because you're being transparent and because they know and they trust you to take on that extra responsibility. So even if things get expensive or even if things are changing in the market, they know that they can trust you to help them find the best rates that they can.
And I think that trust is something that, is so easily broken. And that's something that we talk about a lot when, we talk about building relationships and other stuff like that. Like having that kind of visibility or that kind of trust, I feel like really speaks volumes when you're trying to work on that relationship with that shipper. Because it's very clearly like, I'm not trying to pull anything over on you. We're in this together. Like this is the best that I can do for you. Like that's what I got, you know? Um, but I guess when you do come to like, okay, well, how are we going to start pricing things? How do you kind of approach some of these dynamic pricing strategies? Because it's still kind of new, in my opinion. Like dynamic pricing has really only started kind of catching on the last 5 to 6 or so years, because it's something that's kind of new and it's hard to like incorporate in a traditional bid as people are still kind of putting those out, and you can't really be like, yeah, here's a bid for dynamic pricing, but also this is the only way that we're moving pricing moving forward. So kind of how do you approach these strategies and then also, kind of hedge against any big market swings that could happen?
Yeah, so one of the key elements is that when we're generating the pricing, we need to make sure that our TMS and that our rating tool is able to bring the dynamic pricing and the static pricing together. Right? We need to be able to bring both of these components together, and so that we're looking at a holistic rating approach. We can't run them separate. We can't be looking to go to like Averett's website to go run some dynamic pricing, whereas all the rest of our pricing is built into our TMS. That's a non-starter. We got to eliminate that from our thought process immediately. And, that maybe was fine 10, 15 years ago, but today we can do better. And so we should. And that dynamic pricing needs to be built into our pricing model. So when we're generating those RFPs, so that when we're producing the rates for our customers, we do have all of that together and we're able to weigh in the dynamic pricing to the static pricing. Now, it becomes a little bit of a problem with RFPs because an RFP is a one-time thing, right? So we build it and then we set it off and we use that as kind of our baseline. But if there's dynamic pricing in there, you can't, right? You can't use that dynamic pricing as a realistic approach for 4 months from now. And that's where we'll bring it right back to the transparency, and that we have to be transparent with the customer and let them know, like, I'm going to give you dynamic pricing on these lanes or for this carrier, and that dynamic pricing is going to change, but this is what your markup's going to look like.
I think that that's kind of like a really good way to kind of explain it, especially when you talk about, the need for it to be inside your TMS, because that was something that one of the companies I worked at, we didn't have. We didn't have we didn't have it inside our TMS, but we wanted the capability to do it. It just, it came at a cost, and leadership said, no, thank you. Like, we're not interested in that. So we ended up taking 1 month of bills from one carrier and just manually typed it in on their website, ran it, and said if we had run these exact same loads with the exact same carriers, we would have saved X amount of money. And that X amount of money was like 3 carriers worth of onboarding with our TMS, which I didn't love how our TMS charged us for it anyway. You had to pay per carrier, per customer combo. It was obnoxious, but that's not the point. But the point is that, because we took that extra 5 minutes, or really we took that extra time to say, okay, well, here's all the money we left on the table. And if we would have had this incorporated into our TMS and into our pricing structure, where anyone out on the floor can do this, we would have saved this much money, even on top of paying for this integration. And at that point in time, obviously it was an easy yes, because if that was just one carrier customer combo paying for everything, there had to be more. But I think that, even from a pricing perspective, when you have those kind of obstacles or you don't have that buy-in from senior leadership, it's important to say okay, well, here's what we're leaving on the table. And sometimes the answer will still be no, but other times it'll be okay, we need to do something about it.
Yeah, well done using data to help drive that decision. I mean, that definitely always goes a long way. And it's unfortunate that you had to put so much effort into making that decision, because that's where your TMS at that time failed you, right? They should be, and it's not that we can, as a TMS provider, that we can respond to everything immediately, but that should be easy, right? These are kind of table stakes at this point. It's been 15, 20 years since we started doing, 15 years probably since we started really doing API rating and expanding the API rates to support the dynamic pricing. It is a lift and it does take work, but once we do it once, as a good TMS provider, we should be able to leverage that for all of our customers so that it scales and it's easier for us to get that dynamic pricing right in where it belongs, so that we can provide the best rates in real time. And that's so important to make that workflow streamlined for our staff.
Yeah, I was absolutely crucial. It became so much easier. And honestly, our service for our customers got better because, when we got better rates, there was a need in that carrier's market or that carrier's network that we were able to fill. So I don't know. I'm a big fan of incorporating it because sometimes it works and it's great, and other times it's just not right for you. But that's why you have that contracted freight or those blanket rates to fall back on.
Yeah, for sure. And you probably won more business from those customers too, because you were able to support them better, faster, more accurately.
So, when it comes to being able to kind of have this access and this data at your fingertips, what are some of those kind of essential technologies and the essential components that, any kind of brokerage should be looking for, whether it's, their own software or TMS or anything like that?
Yeah, so more and more of the carriers do support dynamic pricing via their APIs. And as I was kind of talking about, we should already be connecting to our carriers via these APIs anyway. It's very accurate. It's getting very fast. It's a lot better. So, if we tried it 10 years ago and then said, well, APIs didn't really work for me at that time, it's a different world. The carriers are making a bigger investment in technology. They're progressing. They're getting better. And the dynamic pricing APIs are mostly stood up and available too. So connecting to that dynamic pricing and connecting to our blanket rates and our static pricing, we can pull all these together very easily. We can also take advantage of some of the other tools like SMC3 has a couple products out there that can really help support that if we need to go that route. So that gives you a handful of different options that allow you to get all this information into your TMS. So that's where we're pretty fortunate right now is especially the last 5 years on the LTL side and the full truckload side, so many high quality technology providers have come into the industry and have helped us level up our expectations on what we can be doing and what we should be doing from as a technology provider and as a technology advocate for our industry and for our brokers. So seeing that progress has been tremendous.
That is something that I do appreciate about the transportation industry as a whole, is that I feel like even 10, 15 years ago, I had to learn how to fax someone a BOL. And I was like, I don't know how to use a fax machine. So I had to learn how to use a fax machine. And then not even 5 years later, our fax machines are like, technically, I think you have one in the office, but nobody really knows where it is or what the number to it is. But it just, even that evolution of, you get the EDI or you get the signed BOLs via like scanned, and then now you can get the EDIs and everything like that. Just the rapid advancement that has come to transportation and supply chain, I think I love it, because while yes, there is that trap that you can fall into of, getting too many processes, too many technological enhancements, you can fall down that trap of, getting too much. But for those that find that sweet spot of getting just enough, it's absolutely game changing.
It really is. And I think we're at a point right now too, where initially when we were talking about technology in our space, it was more like just we needed technology. Like we knew we needed a TMS and we knew we needed something to replace the paper that we were handing around. And that was great. We knew we needed to make it a little bit easier than trying to figure out what our fax machine phone number was. Like we knew these things, but our barometer for entry was kind of low, right? And it was really just like, if we can do basically like an Excel spreadsheet kind of and call that a TMS, it was good enough. And some of our legacy TMSs that are out there today still are kind of leaning in that methodology, but the modern TMS, the modern freight management, it's got to be a lot further than that, right? It has to really help focus on the operations person and make it so that you never have to worry about the fax number or whether or not you're sending it via fax or email. Like, that should just be one click or another, and really focus on letting the operations person, the people who are doing the job, how do we make their job great? Operational excellence is something that I love to talk about, but we really try to take that as far as we can, because that's the evolution of a technology product. Is first, yeah, we need it. It's great to have anything because anything's better than nothing. But now we're beyond that, and we're at the point where we need technology that really makes the operations people good at what they do. It really makes their job a lot easier. And that comes into, as you're talking about some of these technologies like EDI and API, we've been talking for a long time, like as an operations person, do you really care if it's API or EDI? Or do you care that the information gets there before you need it? Does it matter how you get the POD, or does it matter that the system got the POD before you asked for it? And I think those kinds of questions are the ones that help us progress to the next level. And those are the things that we should all be thinking about.
It is 2024, and I will say this every year. We need to stop running our supply chains on Excel. Excel is a great tool, and it can do a lot of things, but please stop using Excel as your main house of data for your supply chain. It's not what that was meant for.
Exactly right. And we see it on the full truckload side too with some of the technologies that if you're using a primitive TMS, or if you're not integrating your technologies together and keeping this on the thread of dynamic pricing, on the full truckload side, we have tools like Green Screen. Well, Green Screen has to be integrated into your workflow and your operations team's process so that they're not going somewhere else or trying hard to get that information from Green Screen, because it's tremendously valuable and gives you that pricing data that's based on more than just hope and prayer. And then in addition to that, you have tools like Parade and Cargo Chief who can really help you build up your relationship with your carriers. Now, we also know that if we're negotiating pricing and our carrier likes us, we're probably going to get a little bit better of a deal, right? It gives us a little bit extra of a lever to turn there. And that's great. So these tools have to be integrated into your TMS. They have to flow together to help you get the best pricing that's available out there.
I am a firm believer that if you are integrating into any sort of pricing structure, any kind of data like that, where, you're going to have that access at your fingertips, and for some reason your integration doesn't go swimmingly, or you're only 60% integrated and you're not getting that full use of everything, or it's somehow made your processes more complicated, then either finish the integration if possible. If not, then it's probably time to find a new provider. There's no harm in saying, it didn't work out, our systems didn't match how we expected. It's just shake hands and part ways amicably, because to make things more complicated when you're trying to improve it is just, basically punching yourself in the face for fun.
And we shouldn't be doing that. Let's not do that. You're exactly right. Right? It's so easy to make an integration from a technology provider. Just to create an integration to somebody is trivial, and that's really easy to do. And when I say this, my product team was going to pull this clip out and strangle me, because they're like, no, it's not easy. And they're right. It's not easy, because making the connection's easy, but making the connection right is really hard. It requires thoughtfulness. It requires talking to customers about how do you use dynamic pricing? How should dynamic pricing fit into my workflow? And where does it fit into my workflow? How do I need to use it? Understanding that helps us build a solution that makes that operational excellence a real thing.
Absolutely. It's kind of that discovery needs to get deeper. It needs to kind of go more than just these people want to improve their processes. That's when you kind of have to go okay, well, in what way? What processes do you want to improve? What are you currently working with? What kind of value add can there be there? I think that comes down to, and I think everyone's kind of starting to catch on that especially when we're talking about technology systems, you really have to get down in the nitty gritty pretty early on to figure out what those capabilities are, to see if there's even a match there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely helps improve the process all the way through.
So I have 2 questions left for you, and one of them might be the hardest question. But first, before that, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what role do you think dynamic pricing will be playing in the supply chain? Will it be kind of the main thing, or will it kind of just be kind of how it's used now, where we still have contractual pricing, but we have a sprinkling of the dynamic in there as well?
I think we're going to see the shift where it'll reverse, and we'll see more dynamic pricing than we will contract pricing, but we'll still have both. And one of the reasons I think we'll still have both is there is still a tremendous value to contract pricing, especially for the lanes that we understand and that we know. Having that contract pricing is just fine. The dynamic pricing is still better for the edge cases. It's still better for the shifts in volume that move around the country. So there's a time and a place for it, but it doesn't have to be 100% of what we do.
I think it's I see it kind of replacing those like mini bids or those like project bids that you'd get where it's like this one shipper has, you know, like a 6-week long project that they're working on. I see that kind of going more the dynamic pricing route. Whereas, you know, if I have 3 loads every week going from California to Vegas, like that's always there's always gonna be a place for contract pricing because that type of volume, 3 every week, you know that's always going to be there. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But yeah, I think that kind of the mini bids or the kind of one-off contract or the one-off project bids, I think those are going to be more what we see dynamic pricing filling in for.
Completely agree with you. That's a great example of use cases for both the dynamic and contract pricing.
So now it's time for the question that we all want to know the answer to. We already know where you stand on a lot of different subjects. So this time, Mitch, if you could have any superpower, but it only worked on Wednesday, what superpower would you choose?
The Wednesday really adds a different dynamic to it because I do tend to be a little bit of a superhero geek, and so there's some superpowers that I really want. But if I only get to use it on Wednesday, I think I got to go with something really practical, and I think I want a quiet button. And so, just the ability to quiet everything down around me, that may include the whole family, like, no arguing on Wednesdays. So, sorry, everything just goes quiet. And at work too, like just everybody has to go quiet and go easy on Wednesdays.
I feel like that's actually kind of a genius superpower, especially because like Wednesday always seems to be the day that like there's always arguments or it's always like a stressful day at work, and that's when people are always like, I don't know, I feel like that's their loudest. Like that's the day that they have the most grievances to air, if you will. And I like that, just being able to be like, not today.
Thanks. Yeah, just in the middle of the week, like a little break, like doesn't that feel like it'd be great? Like we're just gonna bring it down a level.
I would love it if to get everyone silent or to get them all quiet, you had to go.
I like it.
Yeah, kind of like the old from Friends.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I like that though. That's a pretty legit superpower. Very underrated.
Thanks. I'm I want to come up with something different for our superpowers because, like I said, if we get it full time, we're gonna have to talk about something different. So
right, the full-time superpower is different because on Wednesday, it's not like you can go be Spider-Man and like be your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and fight crime, but just on Wednesdays because then like the bad guys would just not crime on Wednesday.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they'd pick up on that pretty quickly. And but then again, villains, I mean, even though they're highly educated, because I mean, I think we see a lot of doctors that are villains, right? But they still tend to not have very good judgment on their timing. So they probably still would keep doing it on Wednesdays.
Well, because their monologue on Tuesday would carry over to Wednesday. So that's when their actual crime would happen and all that. We love a good villain monologue.
But, we can still quiet down our villains on Wednesday. Like,
So if anyone has any superhero tips for you or if they have any questions on dynamic pricing or what to expect from their TMS, where can they find you outside the show?
Yeah, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn as well as on our website at tai-software.com. We'd love to talk to you and show you what our TMS is all about and how we can bring dynamic pricing together for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
You can find Check Out the Podcast anywhere you get your podcasts like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Don't forget to check out all the other incredible FreightWaves podcasts such as Running on Ice and Loaded and Rolling. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/checkcall. See you on the internet.